curators of our local museums work diligently to attract and engage diverse audiences in meaningful ways. We're calling tonight's session, Museums, What Are They Good For? Each museum director will give a presentation about their institution's goals, challenges, and efforts to be more inclusive. It's my great pleasure to welcome the executive directors of 4 of our community's wonderful museums.
We as a museum are trying to look at the world around us with the same eyes that Leonardo used to look at the world around him 500 years ago. So we're looking at topics in science and society, and we're looking at them through the lenses of, art, science, technology, engineering, all the tools that he used.
Think more about the connection of nature and people, that we illuminate the natural world and the place of humans within it.
I'm very, very fascinated with art that is tackling social issues and really makes us think about who we are, and how we shape cultural identity, and how we shape community identity.
To create exhibitions, collect and exhibit art that is in dialogue with important issues and ideas that we face in contemporary culture. Valuing art and artists and asking them to help us to better understand the world around us.
Too often we are surrounded by a bubble of people that have very similar educations, even if they don't come from the same place. We speak the same vernacular and we have the same goals, and so how do we reach outside of the people that are in that echo chamber?
So we have 1.5 million objects. One of the challenges in a science museum and a natural history museum is you can't reinstall those exhibits all the time. We spent 3 years asking people, what are the important stories? What are the important messages? We traveled all over the state.
We're still very much in the process of actually getting our name out there and connecting with our audiences. We're still an unknown entity to a lot of people, because how do you engage a community if the community is not clear on what are you? What are you doing? Are you art? Are you science? Who are you for?
As you think about it, when you walk through, it's a very angular building. All the label copy is written from the voice of the scientist, right?
And we think about barriers to participation. We recognize that there are both physical, real barriers, barriers of transportation, hours of operation, admissions fees.
The challenges, I can summarize it in one word, and that's funding, and so we can now move on past that.
Don't touch, don't talk, don't breathe, don't move kind of perception about. So we're not often seen as welcoming. What can we do as museums to maybe be more inviting?
Ideas like, this place is not for me. This is not my community's artwork. I don't know anything about art. I don't know anything about this art. There's nothing there in my language. Sometimes almost more personal and emotional barriers.
How do we make a statement that isn't beating people over the head? I want you to see the art first and then come in and realize, hey, there's something that's tying this all together. I don't want the art to be subservient to the message, but the message is important to bring the art together.
Museums have a very successful tradition with relatively privileged Caucasians, and we recognize that we need to change that with our board, with our staff.
I worked at a museum in Connecticut. During the 4 years that I was on staff in our contemporary program, we had 11 one-person exhibitions. And would you believe that in that time, in 4 years, of the 11 artists, 9 of them were white men, 2 of them were women, and 1 of the women was a person of color. I think this is totally not acceptable.
Rural communities are very underserved. It's really important to give people access regardless of whether they live within 50 miles.
As a museum that is hoping to bring dialogue that matters to us as a community, we assembled an advisory committee, so we work with 27 service organizations. We gave all the service providers cameras for their clients, so we actually included also the perspective of the homeless as a first-person view in the exhibit to give voice directly to the people that this exhibit was about.
We're taking advantage of new technologies. We're doing 3D visualizations of these objects, 3D prints. Teachers can download the files and print them, mechanical interactives, but we know people learn really well when they interact with people, so we're expanding volunteers in the galleries.
Engaging visitors in conversation and dialogue, not just about art for art's sake, but in connection with issues that matter to us. The environment, social justice and equality, issues of race and gender and identity, that people, especially younger people, they don't want to just passively experience what we offer them. They want to participate in the conversation, and they even want to help shape it.
We're a program for LGBT teens to help them come to terms with the coming out process or gender identity. And what happened was this Out Loud program, which was a 10-week program. We brought in community leaders, we did workshops.
Often in art, as curators, we are the authority, whereas here we strongly felt that we weren't the authority on homelessness.
Another thing that I think it is important to do is to challenge assumptions. Ideologies are not native. Ideologies are social constructs. And if we are going to have an effective political discourse, regardless of where you sit on the aisle to the left or to the right, you need to start from the understanding that that which you believe has been constructed and it is not a natural state.
Art plus ideas, we like to talk about, right? Art together with ideas. It's a much more engaging mix than art just for art's sake.
We are trying to bring the scientists into the galleries. Every Friday afternoon, we have somebody talking about their research. It's a great way of engaging with people.
It's much more about beginning the conversation, being willing as an institution to encourage and to invite the conversation to happen.
And it brings together a variety of artists that over the course of 3 or 4 days create works together. The artists are brought in, they do some of their work in the studio, but they also really engage with the general public, talking about the process. They'll host workshops.
Take them around to colleges. We help them with their applications, their financial aid. These are kids who are from families who often haven't finished high school. And so for those of us who grew up in relatively privileged families, we kind of know how to apply to college, but not everybody does.
So it's not just hosting the conversation. It's not just inviting people to get together in your space. The space of the museum is a forum for conversation, for community connection, for dialogue.
Please enjoy, relax, dance, touch, flirt, wonder, feel, muse, and to really create an environment that make people feel comfortable about having this kind of an experience.
And this is sort of one of the things that sticks with me. And any day that I'm frustrated, I think about this. And the student said, before I had this program, I was by myself. I didn't think that there was anyone like me. I couldn't talk to teachers. I couldn't talk to counselors. I felt isolated and alone. And now I have 12 friends that are going through the same thing. And what really stuck with me is they said that I don't know if I would have done it, but I would be lying if I didn't say I hadn't thought about killing myself. This program saved my life. And like, how do you not see the power of what it is that museums can do with a story like that?
So everyone's shared some really interesting insights about your museum's goals and challenges and efforts. How are you measuring these results?
We engaged with the Gardner Policy Institute at the university to try to understand that, and they basically came down and said, you have to ask people. We're doing voluntary visitor surveys to try to get a handle on that. But it's not...
And just to learn more about who people are and where
Right.
they're coming from.
Yeah, and why they're coming, and how did they hear about us,
Yeah.
you know, all of that.
What does it mean to have a commitment to inclusion and diversity as a museum?
I think it's very important to start at the board and at the staff level. It's inclusion about what topics are we interpreting, what do we look like collectively at the museum, and just also understanding where we have blind spots. There is oftentimes very unintentional ignorance going on, and so I think, you know, listening and just taking a hard look at ourselves is very important.
Things like entrance fees and free days and special membership programs.
But I don't think we should have to ever be ashamed of telling people what our value is and giving them the option to support it, because we do have value. There's a strict monetary value to what it is that we do.
What would you say to someone that said to you, there's nothing in your museum for me?
We know that there are a lot of people who don't have affinities for museums, and so by offering a wide variety of programs that you wouldn't expect to find in a natural history museum.
How do you spend your free choice time and dollars? Because really that is what we're up against. People only have so much time. And it's not me just going in and saying, I have this. It's saying, what do you like?